Battles of the Bulge Cell is a two-player game that simulates the fighting near the Meuse River during the critical phase of the Battle of the Bulge in World War II. The game includes one 22 by 17-inch paper map where each hex represents 1 mile from side to side. The game also includes 88 5/8 of an inch counters. The counters include the German, American, and British forces that participated in this phase of the battle. Each unit belongs to a particular division or brigade, and such units are color-coded by formation. This is a unit of the 2nd Panzer Division. It is a two-step unit as shown by the two white pips. It has an attack strength of 11, defense strength of 8, and movement allowance of 9. After this unit is activated and finishes its activation, it is flipped to its used side, where you see in white print reduced attack and defense values, as well as a movement allowance of 0. The game includes a player chart with all the charts and tables needed to play the game. There is a 12-page rules booklet, but the actual rules cover a little more than 9 pages. The back of the rules manual has the game setup display where the position of starting units and reinforcements are shown. Let's take a look at the different terrain types and the costs in movement points to enter or cross each of the terrain features. The cost for motorized units, you will see it on the bottom of the screen to the left, and for infantry units in parentheses. This is a rough hex. Here we see a woods hex. Hex 2510 is a clear hex. This here is a minor river. The brown lines are roads, and here the black line represents a highway. Rochefort is a town, and Jamel a village. This game uses a chit pull mechanic where each of the sides draws action chits representing divisions or brigades that are activated, as well as tactical chits which enhance the capabilities of that side's units. In this game, combat is a function of movement. In order to initiate an attack, the activated unit must pay 3, 6, or 9 movement points in order to launch a light, medium, or heavy attack, respectively. Light attacks suffer of a die roll modifier of -2. Medium attacks have no such die roll modifier, while heavy attacks increase the attack strength with a die roll modifier of +1. The game is won on account of victory points. The Germans score 1 victory point each turn for each of their units that is adjacent to the Meuse River. If the German victory point total ever reaches 20 victory points, the game ends immediately with a decisive German victory. If the Germans fail to reach the 20 victory point mark, the game ends after 8 turns when victory points are added to each side for having units in certain towns. Each side also receives 1 victory point for each enemy step eliminated. In this game, most units have 2 steps, as signified by the number of white pips above their unit type symbol. When these units suffer a step loss, their counter is substituted with a reduced version of the unit, showing 1 red pip. At the end of the game, the side with the most victory points wins. Instead of explaining the rules here in detail, we will play a full game. In this video, you will see turns 1 through 4 and in the next video, turns 5 through 8. Here we see the map, and the Germans will start in the southeastern portion of the map, and they will have to push in the direction here, which is northwest, and reach the Meuse River that is here. They cannot cross the river, but they must be placed adjacent to the river to score victory points each turn. The more units that are adjacent to the Meuse River, the more victory points that the Germans will score. Let's see the units that begin on the map. At the beginning of the game, 2 units of the British 29th Armour Brigade start in towns that are in the Meuse River. One starts at Givet, and the other one at Dinant. They will not be able to move until December 25th. Now let's take a look at the placement for the American units that begin the game on the map. This is a unit of the 3rd Armored Division, and it is immobile, and it will begin the game in Houghton. This recon unit of the 4th Cavalry is placed within 2 hexes of hex 2305, which is a crossroads hex, and we will leave it right there. A unit of the 84th Infantry Division begins in Rochefort. Now we place 4 units of the 84th Infantry Division within 2 hexes of Marche, which is here. And here we have the units placed on the map. Now we place 3 more units of the 84th Infantry Division, and they will be placed within 1 hex of Houghton here, also within 1 hex of Marche, or the highway between both towns. And here we see the units after they have been placed on the map. Now let's take a look at the placement for the initial German units. This recon unit of the 116th Panzer Division is placed in hex 3211. This armored unit of the 116th Panzer Division is placed here in hex 3011. This recon unit of the 2nd Panzer Division is placed here in the town of Hargimont. And this armored unit of the 2nd Panzer Division is placed right next to Hargimont here in hex 2712. The game begins with the December 23rd night turn. And note that we have here some numbers with squares here. This means that the Allies can only execute 1 action this turn, while the Germans can execute 2. And by a special rule, the Germans have the initiative during the first turn and must perform the first action. Each turn has 8 phases. The chit phase, where players adjust the action chits and tactical chits in their cups and reset the actions available markers. Then the supply phase, where supply is checked and units may become unsupplied, and units that are previously unsupplied become isolated. Then the initiative is determined, and there's going to be a first player who will perform the first action, pulling chits from the cup and activating units for movement and combat. Then the second player does the same thing, and then we continue alternating with the first player followed by the second player until both players have expended all of their actions. Then in the recovery phase, we remove all disrupted markers and we flip all units to their unused sides. And then in the victory point phase, the German player receives victory points for units that are insupplied and adjacent to Meuse river hexes. So the first turn of the game is the December 23rd night turn, and the night is signified by the moon symbol. During night turns, the Germans have certain advantages that mostly have to do with movement, but remember that in this game, combat is a function of movement, and to attack, you have to have at least 3 movement points left. Now, the symbols here tell us that the Allies can only conduct 1 action, while the Germans can conduct 2. Compared to the next turn, in the next turn, which is a daylight turn, the Allies can conduct 2 actions and the Germans 3. But for now, we go to the first turn of the game, December 23rd, night turn. The first phase of the game is the chit phase, and we adjust the action chits and tactical chits in their cups and reset the actions available markers. Now, during each turn, each of the sides may draw what is called tactical chits. The Germans have 3 tactical chits: night replacement, combat, and extra move. So we place them in the German draw cup. The Allies have 4 tactical chits: extra move, day replacement, allied air, and combat, and we place these in the Allied cup. Now we consult the German and Allied action chits per turn table to see which particular action chits go into the cups in this turn. It is the 23rd of December. So on the German side, 1 chit for the Lehr Panzer Division and 1 for the 2nd Panzer Division. Here are the action chits, and in the cup they go. On the Allied side, only 1 chit for the 2nd Armor Division, which has no units on the map, so they will enter as reinforcements when this chit is drawn. And here is the chit for the 2nd Armor, and we place it in the Allied cup. Note that on the board at the beginning of the game, there are several units of the 84th Infantry Division, but there is no action chit for them during the first turn of the game. And as we saw before in the game turn track, the Germans have 2 actions, so we place the action limit here in the number 2 box for the Germans. And the Americans, because they only have 1 action, we place the action limit on their number 1 box. And now we move to the supply phase, where we check for supply for all of the units. The Germans trace supply to what is called the German rear area, and it is this area marked by this gray hexide here. And all German units begin the game in supply. The Americans trace supply to the eastern edge, including hex 3306 northward, and they trace supply also to the northern edge. Meanwhile, the British units not shown here trace supply to the western edge of the map. Now we go to the initiative phase, where the initiative is determined, but by special rule, the Germans have the initiative in this first turn, and they must conduct an action. So we draw from the draw cup, and the Germans draw a tactical chit. This is a combat chit. And we place this tactical marker on the tactical available area. We have to keep on drawing until we draw an action chit that belongs to one of the units. So we make a second draw, and it's another tactical chit, extra move. We also place it here in the tactical available area. You draw again, another tactical chit. This one is night replacement. And the Germans have drawn 3 tactical chits so far, with no action chits yet. Next, Finally, we draw an action chit for the Panzer Lehr division. And we place it in our number 1 action box. Since we know that the Germans are limited to 2 actions, we will place the action limit on the number 3 box. And now we activate the units of the Panzer Lehr division. There are no units of the Panzer Lehr division on the map, so we have reinforcements which are scheduled to come in for that unit. We check the game setup card, and we have an armored unit from the Panzer Lehr division and a recon unit, and they begin in hex 2216. Here we have both units, so we place them here, hex 2216, and note that they start the game overstacked, and that hex stacking limits in this game is 2 pips, and with both units there it is 3, but that can be corrected at the end of this action phase. The first thing we'll do is move this armored unit of the Panzer Lehr division using regular movement, 1, 2, and stopping here in this hex, which is in the zone of control of this American unit. In this game, we can move units through enemy zones of control through a process known as infiltration. So now this unit wishes to move to this hex, and that would be a movement from one enemy zone of control to another. Motorized units have to pay 2 movement points to attempt infiltration plus the cost of the terrain they wish to move to. So it would be 2 plus the cost of the woods hex, that is 4. That would be 6 movement points. And as I stated before, infiltration is not automatic. So now we will roll on the infiltration table. So we will roll 1d10 on the infiltration table, and there's 3 possible results. The unit that is attempting to infiltrate is disrupted. It cannot enter the hex, stops moving, and cannot attack. Or with an F, that means that it is finished and it stops moving and cannot attack. The S is a successful result. It can enter the hex, continue to move, and or attack if it has sufficient movement factor. So we roll 1d10, and in this game, this is a 10-sided die. A 0 is a 0. Now, there's a series of modifiers that apply in this particular roll, +1 because it's a German unit, which is infiltrating, and +2 because it's a night turn. So we roll 1d10 with a +3. And the roll is a 6 modified to a 9, and the infiltration attempt is successful. And the Panzer Lehr armor unit manages to move to the southwest of the 84th Infantry Unit in Rochefort, and it'll stop movement there. Now the recon unit for the Panzer Lehr division will move, and the Germans during night turns have an advantage in that they can use strategic movement. Strategic movement increases the movement allowance of their units by 3 additional movement points for 12 for this unit. And there are certain requirements. The unit cannot start or end or move adjacent to an enemy unit when it uses strategic movement. So this unit will move here, spend 4 movement points to move to this hex, 4 more here for a total of 8. Then use 2 movement points to enter this clear hex. And that's 10 movement points so far, and it will use its remaining 2 movement points to move through the roads to this hex right next to the other Panzer Lehr unit. And that's the end of that movement and the end of the activation for the Panzer Lehr division during this turn. Now we flip those 2 units to their used sides. And that's the end of the first action of the turn. Now we draw chits for the Allies, and the first one is a tactical chit, a combat chit. And we place it in the tactical available area for the Allies. Next, we draw another tactical chit, and this one is Allied Air. We also place it in the tactical available area, but this tactical chit does not enter into play or has no effect during night turns. Next, another tactical chit, day replacement. Place it in the same area, and again, this tactical chit has no effect during night turns either. You draw finally an activation chit for the only unit that can activate for the Allies in this turn, the 2nd Armored Division. In this turn, the Allies only have one action, so we will place the action limit to the right of the only box where we can place an action chit, and we place the 2nd Armored activation chit in the number 1 box. And the reinforcements consist of 2 units of the US 2nd Armored Division, and there are 3 possible hexes where we can place them. And the 2 units can begin and enter the game through any of these 3 hexes on the northern edge of the map, but by special rule they only have 6 movement points during this turn. So we place both units, one here and one here, and they will take advantage of the highway to move as quickly as possible in southerly direction to meet the advancing Germans that are outflanking the Americans at Rochefort. This unit takes advantage of the highway, moves through Ciney, and reaches this hex here. This unit spends 4 movement points to reach this hex, and its remaining 2 movement points to move next to the other American unit of the 2nd Armor. And that's the end of the Allied action phase. The Germans still have 1 action, so we draw chits from the German Cup. And we draw the chit for the 2nd Panzer Division. We place it here on the available actions track, and note that we can conceivably use now these tactical chits during this action. The 2nd Panzer Division has 2 units currently on the map and also 3 units that enter as reinforcements in this turn. These are the 2nd Panzer reinforcements, and they enter the game through hex 3316, which is in the German rear area. So let's see what options the Germans have with the 2nd Panzer Division. There is currently a huge gap here, and 2nd Panzer units could advance conceivably through this road and reach the vicinity of Bouzonville. Also, it is conceivable that these units could fall upon the Americans here at Rochefort and attack in conjunction with Panzer Lehr units, which have already been activated. But before moving any 2nd Panzer Division units, the Germans will use one of their tactical chits that are available, the extra move chit, and that will allow the Germans to activate 1 unit, and that will be the Panzer Lehr armored unit that is adjacent to the Americans in Rochefort. The unit is flipped to its unused side, and because it will not move, it is not flipped back to its used side. And now we activate units from the 2nd Panzer Division. The recon unit of the 2nd Panzer Division will move through this road and take a position here in this woods hex. That ends its activation, and it is flipped to its used side. Meanwhile, this armored unit of the 2nd Panzer will move in this direction, spending 4 movement points to reach this wooded hex. It has 5 movement points left, and now it spends 3 to conduct a light attack against the 84th Infantry here in Rochefort. this Panzer unit will join in the attacks. So we have 22 German combat factors versus 7 American, 3-1, and the die roll modifiers are -2 because this is a light attack. Remember that this is the active unit and it spent 3 movement points to initiate the attack. So 3 movement points only buys you a light attack, which has a die roll modifier of -2. There's an additional -1 because there is a minor river between one of the attackers and the defenders. And there's an additional -2 because the American unit occupies a town hex. So we're at -5. There is a +1 because this is a German attack occurring during a night turn. So we're at +4. The Germans, to somewhat increase their chances, use now their combat marker, and they use that +1, so now we're at -3. But the Allies have a combat marker of their own, and they also use it, and now the die roll modifier is back to -4. So the final die roll modifier will be -4. This is not a great attack, but the Germans don't have the luxury of time. So we roll 1d10. The roll is a 6 modified to a 2. No effect. So the units from both sides stay where they are, and the 2nd Panzer armored unit is flipped to its used side. Now we move the reinforcements that entered the map this turn for the 2nd Panzer. The topmost armored unit moves through the highway and roads to reach this rough hex here. The next armored unit follows along and reaches this rough hex. And finally, the recon unit also moves along the same roads to reach the village of Hargimont. Having finished their moves, all 3 units are now flipped to their used sides. And that's the end of the action phase for the 2nd Panzer. That's the end of the action phases. And now we go to the recovery phase. Here we would remove any disruption markers, but there are no such markers on the map. Now we flip all used units to their unused sides. Now to the victory check, there are no victory points earned during this turn. And now we advance the turn marker to the December 24th turn, and this is a day turn where the Allies will have 2 actions and the Germans 3. Because the Allies will have 2 actions, we'll place the action limit marker on the number 3 box. We place the action marker for the Germans on the number 4 box, meaning that the Germans have 3 actions for this turn. Now to the chit phase, and in this turn the Germans receive 4 action chits, 1 from the 116th Panzer Division, 2 from Panzer Lehr, and 2 from the 2nd Panzer Division, and they all go in the German Cup. The Allies receive 1 action chit from the 4th Cavalry, 1 from the 84th Infantry Division, and 1 for the 2nd Armored Division. And in addition, we place the tactical chits for each of the sides back in their respective cups. And now to the supply phase. We check the supply status of all units on the map. The only unit that is unsupplied is the American 84th Infantry Unit in Rochefort. So we will place a out of supply marker on the unit, but we will actually place it underneath the unit so that we can still see the identity of the unit. Unsupplied units have the following penalties. Their movement allowances are reduced by 1/3, so the movement allowance of that unit would now be 2. And if they attack with a -2 die roll modifier. And now to the initiative phase, each of the sides rolls 1d10, and because this is a day turn, the Americans receive a +1 die roll modifier. If this would be a night turn, it would be the Germans receiving that +1. So we roll dice for each of the sides, and the result is a 0 for the Germans, a 2 for the Allies modified to a 3, so the Allies have the initiative. The Allies have 2 actions this turn, the Germans 3, but the Allies want to prevent the Germans from advancing too quickly, and we have a unit that is surrounded at Rochefort, so the Allies will take the first action. So we pull a chit from the Allied cup, and it is an action chit for the 4th Cavalry. And we place the action chit in the number 1 action box. There's only one unit from the 4th Cavalry on the map, and it is here near Haversin. But luckily for the Allies, this unit can be moved to this area to try to stop the advance by the 2nd Panzer Division. So the 4th Cavalry will move in this direction and take a position here in this wooded hex that is a crossroads. And it is inverted to its used side. Now it's the Germans' turn to pull chits from their cup, and they activate the 2nd Panzer Division. Place the action chit in the action 1 box. The 2nd Panzer has 5 units on the map, one which is here besieging the Americans at Rochefort, and these 3 units that are well on their way to Buissonville here, and opening a wider gap between the Allied forces. The 4th Cavalry is very weak with a defense of 2, so this may be a good opportunity to get rid of that unit. This Panzer unit moves 6 hexes along the road here, and with its remaining 3 points, it will launch a light attack against the American recon unit. Combat factors 11 to 2. This is a 5 to 1 attack, and the modifiers are -2 for the light attack, -1 because the defenders are in woods, so this is a total of -3. So we roll 1d10 with a -3. The result is a 0 modified to a -3. The attackers are disrupted. So we would place a disruption marker on the German unit, but in order to be able to see which unit is disrupted, we will place a yellow semi-transparent disc on top of the German unit, and that yellow disc means that it is disrupted. With the failure of that attack on the 4th Cavalry, now the remaining Panzer units must decide whether to push to the west and leave this American position in Rochefort surrounded there, or try to eliminate the American unit there. However, in this game, the combat result table, does not have a 4 to 1 column. So it is useless to bring 4 to 1 odds. It's the next odds column is 5 to 1. And right now the 2nd Panzer unit can initiate an attack with this unit in support, and it would be 22 to 7, 3 to 1. But the Americans have a -2 die roll modifier because they're in a town and there's a minor river between these 2 units. So it's a -3, which really reduces the chance of a successful German attack. So the Germans do nothing by adding this unit to the attack. Consequently, the Germans will move these units to the west and attempt an attack with this 2nd Panzer unit. This 2nd Panzer armored unit moves along the road to this crossroads wood hex, ending its activation. This recon unit from the 2nd Panzer moves along the roads through Buissonville, stopping here at this crossroads hex and ending there its move. Note that the German units do not want to venture to this area here because these two powerful American tank units could easily destroy them. Now, before moving this 2nd Panzer unit, this unit will conduct an attack together with this armored unit of the Panzer against the Americans in Rochefort. It is a 3-to-1 attack. Let's take a look at the modifiers. The Americans are in a town, so we start with -2. Note that the Americans are unsupplied. That changes nothing in terms of die roll modifiers. They have to be isolated for them to provide a +2. So we're still at -2. There is a minor river between the 2nd Panzer and the American unit, so that's an additional -1. So we're at -3. But the 2nd Panzer unit will spend 9 movement points to conduct a heavy attack, so that adds a +1. So the total die roll modifier is -2. The result is a 3 modified to a 1. No effect. So the Americans at Rochefort still hold on, and the unit that initiated the attack finishes its activation and is now used. Now there's one unit left from the 2nd Panzer that is able to move, and another big decision. Do the Germans leave this unit in this vicinity to prevent these infantry units from advancing onto the German rear area, or do the Germans take the chance and advance this unit to put more pressure on the Americans as they have to defend the approaches to the Meuse River? The Germans take the second option and move the 2nd Panzer recon unit all the way to Buissonville. That's the end of that move. The unit is flipped to its used side, and that's the end of the activation of the 2nd Panzer unit. We pick a chit from the Allied Cup, and it is the 84th Infantry. And this will be the last Allied unit to be activated in this turn. The 84th Infantry Division is spread out along the front. These units we have a cluster of units here around Marche, and one unit surrounded here at Rochefort. By special rule, only 3 units of the 84th Infantry can be activated when its action chit is selected. The unit at Rochefort will hold its ground. Remember, Rochefort in this game is worth 2 victory points if the Germans do not win on the account of having units adjacent to the Meuse. For that, they need 20 victory points. If they don't win that way, then we count the victory points for certain towns, and Rochefort is one of those 2 victory point towns. In this turn, the Allies receive a truck marker for one of the 84th Infantry units. What it does is that it motorizes the unit and gives it 9 movement points, and if it is a day turn, where Allied units can use strategic movement, it will allow the unit to move 12 movement points. So here is the situation near Marche, and there is a group of units of the 84th Infantry Division there, a total actually of 7 units. This unit here to the south of Houghton, which is also a 2 victory point hex, will be motorized. Only 3 of the 84th Infantry units can move. The first one will be this unit, will move here to place a zone of control on the 116th Panzer armored unit. The next unit to move will be this one. It will take the highway, reach this crossroads, and take Hargimund. And finally, we will move the newly motorized unit of the 84th Infantry Division, which is here, across this route here through Marche by way of Hogn and reaching Haversin and stopping here in this wooden hex to try to somewhat block the advance of the 2nd Panzer units. And the unit finished moving, so now it is flipped to its used side, and that is the end of the activation of the 84th Infantry. Now we pull a chit from the German Cup, and it is a tactical chit, a combat chit. And we place it in the tactical available area. Pull another chit, another tactical chit, extra move. Now the Germans have 2 tactical chits. Next, another tactical chit, and this is a night replacement chit. And we place it in the available area. However, this chit will not have any effect in this turn because this is a day turn. And we pull an action chit for the Panzer Lehr Division. And we place it in the number 2 actions box. Panzer Lehr does receive a reinforcement, an armored unit, and it is placed in hex 2216. And we place the unit in its entry hex. So now with the extra move tactical chit, there is an opportunity to destroy and eliminate the Americans holding out at Rochefort. So the Germans will play the extra move tactical chit to activate this 2nd Panzer unit, which is now flipped to its unused side. And now that Panzer unit will attack the Americans at Rochefort, and this Panzer Lehr unit will provide support. So it's 22-7, a 3-to-1 attack. The diroll modifiers that apply are -2 because the defenders are in a town, -1 because there's a minor river between some of the attackers and the defenders, so we're at -3. But the 2nd Panzer is executing a heavy attack because it's using 9 movement points to attack. So that goes down to -2. And the Germans will now play their combat chit, which now increases the diroll modifier to -1. So it's a 3-to-1 attack with a -1 diroll modifier. We roll 1d10. And luckily for the Germans, the roll is a 9 modified to an 8. And that is defender suffers a loss and must retreat. The defenders only have 1 step, so the 84th Infantry unit is eliminated. And the attackers can have 1 unit occupy the vacated hex, but the Germans will want this Panzer Lehr unit to pass through Rochefort, and having a unit there will cost 2 movement points. So the attackers will not occupy the vacated hex. And we flip the activated unit to its used side. And now the Panzer Lehr unit is activated. There are 3 of the Panzer Lehr units on the map. So we move now the Panzer Lehr units, and note that there is still 1 more action available for the Germans and 3 action chits in the cup, 1 for the Panzer Lehr, 1 for the 2nd Panzer, and 1 for the 116th Panzer Division. So there is a slight chance that Panzer Lehr will move twice. But of course, that is yet to be determined. For now, Panzer Lehr has 3 units on the map, and it's their time to move. This recon unit moves along the road through the woods to this rough hex here. This armored unit of the Panzer Lehr Division follows along and reaches this rough hex. The reinforcing Panzer Lehr unit moves along the highway into this woods hex and ends its move here. That's the end of the activation for the Panzer Lehr Division. The Allies have already used their 2 actions, so we keep on drawing from the German Cup, And this is an action marker for the 116th Panzer Division. This will be the last unit to move in this turn. The 116th Panzer Division receives a reinforcement. The arrows show the possible placement hexes, and the unit is placed here in hex 3311. The recon unit will move in this direction to this rough hex adjacent to Hargimont. It will not attack. The reinforcing unit will move along the road through Band, south of the 84th Infantry Unit, and ends its activation. Now the armored unit, which has not been activated, will attack the 84th Infantry using all of its movement factors in a heavy attack together with the recently moved unit of the 116th Panzer. 17 against 4. This would normally be a 4-to-1 attack, but there's no 4-to-1 column on the combat results table, so we use the 3-to-1 column. There are no modifiers favorable to the Americans because they are in a rough hex. This is a heavy attack, so the Germans receive a +1 die roll modifier. So we roll 1d10. The roll is a 4 modified to a 5. Defender is disrupted. So we place a disruption marker on the defending unit, and the activated Panzer unit is now flipped to its used side. And that concludes the activation of the 116th Panzer Division. And that concludes the actions phase for this turn. Now to the recovery phase, and the disruption markers are now removed. And all used units are flipped to their fresh sides. And there are no points to be given in the way of victory points yet, so the victory point score is still at 0. And that's the end of this turn. And now we move on to the December 24th night turn. Here the Germans will have a +1 die roll modifier on their attacks, 2 actions for the Allies and 4 for the Germans. To the chit phase, and we place tactical markers in each of their respective cups. The Germans have 5 action chits, 1 for the 116th Panzer, 2 for the Panzer Lehr, and 2 for the 2nd Panzer Division. Meanwhile, the Allies receive 1 for the 4th Cavalry, 1 for the 84th Infantry, and 1 for the 2nd Armor. Next, we go to the supply phase, and all units are in supply. Next, the initiative phase. There's a +1 die roll modifier for the German die roll because this is a night turn, so we roll 2d10. The Germans a 4 modified to a 5, the Allies a 0, so the Germans have the initiative. The Germans with the initiative decide to be the first player, so they draw 1 chit from the cup, and it is the action chit for the 2nd Panzer Division. And the 2nd Panzer will be the first unit activated in this night turn. There are 5 units of the 2nd Panzer on the map, and this unit will be activated to move through this highway to this hex here. And now it spends 6 movement points to launch a medium attack together with this unit of the 116th against this 84th Infantry unit. The American unit is in a woods hex, so there is a -1 for terrain, but this is a night turn, so the Germans receive a +1 die roll modifier, so this will be a 2-to-1 attack with no modifiers. And the die roll is a 0, so things do not start well for the Germans. Both attacking units are disrupted, and that is the end of the activation of the 2nd Panzer unit. So the 2nd Panzer unit, this recon unit, will make a dash to the west through these hexes occupied by German units, and each of those hexes occupied by a German unit costs the moving unit 2 movement points to reach this hex here, spending its last movement point, a total of 12 movement points because of strategic movement, and ending its move there. Similarly, this armored unit moves by way of Montgolfier through the woods and ending its move here in Celle. It spent 11 of its 12 movement points, but it ends its move there to take the protection of the woods. This 2nd Panzer unit will move here to this important crossroads hex here at Montgolfier. Meanwhile, this 2nd Panzer unit will move into this wooded hex, which is also a crossroads. And that's the end of the activation of the 2nd Panzer Division. Pull a chit from the Allied Cup, and this is Day Replacement. This is a night turn, so this tactical chit will have no effect on play this turn for the Allies. Next chit, and this is an action chit for the 4th Cavalry. The 4th Cavalry only has 1 unit in the game, which is here. And in this game, we can activate all units of a specific formation by placing the action chit face up on the action track, or if we place it with its backside up, we can activate 1 unit of any other formation. So what the Allies will do is that they will use this action chit to activate 1 of the 2 units of the 2nd Armored Division. So we place the 4th Cavalry marker with its backside up to denote that we will activate 1 unit from another formation. So the Allies will activate this 2nd Armored unit, and it will spend 5 movement points to move through Sorin to this hex adjacent to this 2nd Panzer unit. The armored unit could attack the German unit at 3-1, but there would be a -3 modifier on account of the German being in a wood hex and the American unit executing a light attack because it doesn't have the requisite 6 movement points for a medium attack, so it will end its activation there. We pull a chit from the German Cup, and it's an action marker for the Panzer Lehr Division. And this is the 2nd formation to be activated by the Germans in this turn. Panzer Lehr receives a reinforcement, and we place it in its starting hex, which is hex 2216. Now, when we take a look at Panzer Lehr's positions, we see that the division already has 4 units on the map, and they are mostly concentrated in this area here, which is below the line formed by 2nd Panzer. So here we see a good opportunity for Panzer Lehr to make a dash to the west and attempt to reach the Meuse River. This is a night turn, so the Germans have strategic movement. That means they have 3 more movement points for all their motorized units. This recon unit takes a southerly route, then southwest to Boirang, and continuing on this highway to a hex south of Falmignol, which is a hex away from the Meuse River. Next unit to move is this Panzer Lehr unit. It takes this route, passing again through Boirang and ending its move here. Next, this Panzer unit takes this route through the woods and through this village, reaching this hex adjacent to Boirang. Finally, the reinforcing unit moves through this highway to Rochefort and continues through this road, through the woods, to this rough hex. And that's the end of the activation of the Panzer Lehr division. And we draw a chit from the Allied Cup, Allied Air. And because this is a night turn, this tactical chit will have no effect this turn. Draw another chit from the Allied Cup, and this is an action marker for the 84th Infantry Division. This will be the last Allied unit to be activated in this turn. There are 6 units of the 84th Infantry here around Marche, and 1 unit which has been motorized with the use of this truck marker here. Now, by special rule, only 3 of the units of the 84th Infantry can be activated. The chances of the 84th attacking these German units are practically nil. In this game, if a unit is to attack, it has to attack all enemy units in its zone of control. So if this unit were to attack, it would have to attack both German units, and we have the same situation here. The Americans surmise that the best thing they can do for now is tie up as many Panzer units as they can. So this unit moves through Marche. So this unit will move through this village and end its move here. And it will not attack. Next, this unit will move into this woods hex, stopping there and ending its activation. And lastly, this unit will move into this hex for the purpose of exerting a zone of control on any unit that enters as a reinforcement from the German rear area. That's the end of the activation of the 84th Infantry. The Allies have already activated both formations for this turn. The Germans, on the other hand, have 2 more formations that they can activate. So we pull a chit from the German Cup, and it is an action marker for the 2nd Panzer. And this will be the 2nd time in this turn that the 2nd Panzer is activated. 2nd Panzer has currently 5 units on the map. So we start by flipping them all to their unused sides. And it is important to note that there are no tactical chits available for the Germans, so they will be moving and attacking only with the capabilities of the 2nd Panzer units. The Germans know that the Allies cannot activate any units in this turn, so this recon unit will take this route here through Costin and will stop here adjacent to the 2nd Armored Unit. It will not attack, and it will end its activation there. Next, this armored unit from the 2nd Panzer will spend 8 movement points to move through the woods and end adjacent also to the 2nd Armor. And the 2nd Armor is practically surrounded. That means that during the upcoming supply phase, if things stay as they are, that unit will be unsupplied. Now this 2nd Panzer unit moves through the road here to place a zone of control on this 84th Infantry unit that is motorized because of the truck's marker. Now looking down to the southeast near the village of Gemel, we see that there is a disrupted 2nd Panzer unit which has 2 American units in its zone of control. This unit, which is in a zone of control, will disengage. That is, it will move to a hex outside of a zone of control. So it will spend 1 movement point for that and half a movement point because of the highway. So the unit has spent 1.5 movement point. The unit has spent 1.5 movement points of his movement allowance of 6, and it's 6 because it is disrupted. No. So far, it has spent 1.5 movement points of his movement allowance. So far, the unit has spent 1.5 movement points of its movement allowance of 6, and it is because disrupted units have their movement allowance reduced by 1/3. So the unit will continue its movement in this direction and end here in this rough hex, which is also a crossroads. That's the end of the unit's activation. And there is one unit left from the 2nd Panzer, which is adjacent to a used unit of the 2nd Armored here to the south of Sorin. The Germans have 11 combat factors, the Americans 8. So this would be a 1-to-1 attack, but in this game, the modifiers can be even more important than the odds. The German unit will use all of its movement points, its 9 movement points, to execute a heavy attack against this American unit. So even though it's a 1-to-1 attack, the Germans have a +1 because of the heavy attack and a +1 because this is a night turn. So the attack has a +2. So we roll 1d10. The result is an 8 modified to a 10. The result is an 8 modified to a 10. The defender is disrupted and has to retreat. So we place a disruption marker on the defending American unit, and it retreats to the north of Sorin. The German unit, which is victorious, has the option of occupying this space. However, this space provides no defensive modifiers to the defender, so the German unit will stay put at Cell and ends its activation, and that's the end of the activation for the 2nd Panzer Division. And we pull another action chit, and it's another action chit for Panzer Lehr. So this is the last unit to be activated in this turn, and note that there are no tactical chits for the Germans. Panzer Lehr has 4 units that moved previously in this turn, so we flip them to their unused sides. And the Germans have a chance to score big points by moving adjacent to the Meuse this turn. The Germans begin by moving this recon unit in a southerly direction and taking a turn to the west and reaching the city of Givet on the Meuse. Note that the unit spent all of its 9 movement points. It could not use strategic movement, which would have given it 3 more movement points, because it ended its move adjacent to an enemy unit. Next, this armored unit moves through the highway in a northerly direction through Falmignol and ends in this wooded hex here, adjacent to the Meuse, where it finishes its activation. Next, this armored unit moves through Boirang along the highway and then taking this road west and finishing its move here, also adjacent to the Meuse. Finally, this Panzer Lehr unit will move through this village in a southerly direction, then turn west and end its move here at Boirang. The reason for occupying this town hex is that first, it's a victory point town hex, which is counted at the end of the game if the Germans don't win through adjacency to the Meuse River. And second, American reinforcements are scheduled to arrive here as one of the possible entry hexes. And that ends the activation of the Panzer Lehr and the actions phase for this turn. Now we go to the recovery phase. All units with disruption markers have them removed. In addition, we flip all used units to their unused sides. That's the end of the recovery phase, and now we move on to the victory points phase. The Germans have 3 units adjacent to the Meuse, so they score 1 victory point for each, so the score is now 3 victory points for the Germans. And now we move to the next turn, which is the December 25th day turn. Here the Allies have 5 actions and the Germans 3. And the Allies, of course, have a +1 die roll modifier in their attacks, and any Allied air marker and a day replacement marker can be used. Now to the chit phase, we place the tactical chits in each side's respective cups. The Germans receive in this turn 7 action markers, but they only have 3 actions, and they have 1 for the 116th Panzer and 2 for Panzer Lehr, as well as the 2nd Panzer Division, 1 for the 9th Panzer Division that can enter the game now, and 1 for the FBB, that's the Führer Belgate Brigade, which may be activated for the first time in this turn. And we place these markers in the German Cup. The Allies have 5 actions this turn and 5 action chits, 1 for the 4th Cavalry, 1 for the 84th Infantry, 1 for the British 29th Armor Brigade that will enter this game for the first time, and 2 chits for the American 2nd Armored Division. And we place them in the Allied Cup. Now we go to the supply phase. The only unit that is unsupplied is this American armored unit from the 2nd Armored. And we place an out of supply marker, which is this marker, and we will place it beneath the unit. Out of supply units move by 1/3 less. That means that unit will have 6 movement points, and they have a penalty of -2 when attacking. Now to the initiative phase. Because this is a day turn, we add 1 to the Allied die roll. So we roll 2d10, and the Allies roll an 8 modified to a 9. The Germans a 1. So the Allies have the initiative, and they choose to go first. So we pull a chit from the Allied Cup, and it is the 4th Cavalry. The 4th Cavalry only has 1 unit represented on the map here. And the question is, if the Allies want to use this activation marker to activate just this 1 unit or some other unit. Now, interestingly enough, there's no Germans in the vicinity of the 4th Cavalry. They could conceivably advance here into Buissonville and start attempting to divide the German forces in 2. So let's see what the Allies decide to do. The Allies decide to activate the 4th Cavalry. And the 4th Cavalry moves by way of Buissonville to this hex here and spends its last movement point, that is its 9th movement point, to enter this woods hex, effectively surrounding this 2nd Panzer unit. The unit has no more movement points, and it is flipped to its used side. So here it is important what happens next. If the Germans draw a 2nd Panzer chit, the 2nd Panzer unit, which is supplied, could attack the 4th Cavalry, but if it doesn't and the Americans draw a 2nd Armored chit, then the 2nd Armored could attack the 2nd Panzer with the support of the 4th Cavalry. So let's see what happens next. We pull a chit from the German Cup, and it is an activation marker for the 2nd Panzer Division. And we place it in the number 1 action box. We see here that 2nd Panzer units are holding the northern side of the front from Celle here all the way to around Jemel. And there's an opportunity here to try to knock out an American unit or at least weaken it. Now, in this game, if a unit is activated and attacks, it has to attack all units in its zone of control. So if this unit were activated, it would have to attack both of these units. However, if this unit is activated, it only attacks 1 unit that is in its zone of control, and it can have the support of any friendly unit adjacent to the enemy. So if this unit attacks this American unit, it can add the support of this 2nd Panzer unit for 19 against 12. Well, that's 1-to-1. But because this would be a heavy attack, this unit would use all of its movement points, it would be a 1-to-1 plus 1. Here we have the 1-to-1 column. These results obviously are bad for the attackers. This result would be a no effect, and this would be like an exchange. Each side would lose 1 step, which is not necessarily bad for the Germans. These American units are very powerful. However, For the Germans to have a positive result, they would have to roll a 6 or greater. They have a +1 here. And that means that is a 4 in 10 chance of a positive result. That is a 40% chance. So the question is, will the Germans take the chance? At this time in the game, they haven't lost a single step. And right now, they have a 40% chance of getting a positive result. And within that 40%, they have here a chance here of inflicting a loss, and a retreat result here will also inflict a loss. So of the 40%, they have, of the 4 chances in 10, 3 will inflict a loss on the Americans. So the Germans will take the chance. And this is a 1-to-1 attack, 18 against 12, with a +1 because this is a heavy attack. The 2nd Panzer is using all of its movement points for this attack. So we roll 1d10. The roll is a 6 modified to a 7. The defenders retreat. And the defenders have to retreat through an enemy zone of control. They don't have a choice. So that first hex that they retreat causes them to suffer a loss. And we replace the original counter with this one with the red pip. And the second hex they retreat into is this one here with the village of Legnon. And the Germans do exercise the option to advance. This 2nd Panzer unit, which was in support, advances into this road hex. And now we flip the active unit to its used side. Now the Germans will activate this 2nd Panzer unit for the purpose of moving from one enemy zone of control to another one here in what is called an infiltration move. Here we have the infiltration table, and this is not a sure thing. A die will be rolled, and because the unit is German, it will get a +1 die roll modifier. None of the other modifiers apply. So the Germans need a final result of 6 or greater for it to be a success and move to the new hex. So we roll 1d10. And luckily the result is a 5 modified to a 6, and it is successful. So the German unit moves to its new hex and will end its move there. Now the Germans activate this armored unit to move 2 hexes to this woods hex. And it has 7 movement points remaining. It spends 6 to execute a medium attack on the surrounded and reduced 4th Cavalry. The previously moved 2nd Panzer unit also joins in the attack, and it is 14 to 2, 7 to 1. There is a -1 die roll modifier because the defenders are in a wood hex. So we roll 1d10, and the result is a 0. So this attack is a failure with a no effect result. This 2nd Panzer unit has 1 movement point left, not enough to leave the zone of control of the 4th Cavalry into a new hex, so it ends its move there. So far with the 2nd Panzer Division, we've seen mixed results, and there's still 2 units that have not been activated. This 2nd Panzer unit does not want to move near the vicinity of this unit because it will be flipped to its used side with a defense of 5. And that will give this American unit an opportunity to cause some damage to it. So it will stay put at Cell. Meanwhile, the German unit here near Rochefort will move 2 hexes here to prevent the Americans from advancing into Rochefort. And that's the end of its activation and the activation of the 2nd Panzer. Now we pull a chit from the Allied Cup, and it is an extra move tactical counter. And we place it in the available area for the Allies. The next chit is from the 2nd Armored Division. And this is the first of 2 activation markers that the 2nd Armored has. Here we see the setup card. The turn which we're in is this one. And the second armored has 3 reinforcements that have been lingering since the prior turn. So now they enter the game, and we will place them in their possible starting hexes. Seems that the reinforcements just entered the game in the nick of time. Here are the 3 hexes from which they can enter the game. Here we have the full strength second armored unit, which is closest to the mouse, and the recently reduced unit. So these reinforcements come really in handy for the Allies. Place each unit in the possible entry hexes. This armored unit moves in this direction through Dinant and here adjacent to the German unit on the River Meuse. It will not attack, so it is flipped to its used side. Next, this armored unit moves to this highway through Ciney and Sorin to end its move here adjacent to the German unit in Celles, spending 7 movement points and ending its activation there too. The unsupplied and reduced second armored unit moves here adjacent to the 2nd Panzer recon unit, and it will move no further. The recon unit from the 2nd armored spends 5 movement points to reach this hex here next to Lignon. Only one more unit to activate, and it is the unit to the north of Sorin, which is at full strength. The unit is activated, and it will move in this direction here, adjacent to the German unit to the northeast of Celles, spending 4 movement points. It would be able to make a light attack, but the odds are not very good. It will be a 2-to-1 with a -3, so it will end its activation there. And that's the end of the activation for the 2nd Armor. Now it's the Germans' turn to pull a chit from the cup, and this is the 116th Panzer Division. And it's been a while since this unit has not been activated. The 116th receives 1 reinforcement. And the reinforcement will enter through hex 3311. The 116th Panzer Division has 4 units on the map, and all are to the south of this Victory Point town, Marche. The first attack seems pretty obvious here. It will be here. So the Germans activate this unit of the 116th, which will lead the attack, and this unit will join. So it is 22-7 or 3-1. The Germans will make a major attack, a heavy attack here, by spending all of the unit's 9 movement points. So it is 3-1 plus 1. There's no other modifier, so we roll 1d10. The result is a 6 modified to a 7. The defender is disrupted and also retreats. So the defending infantry unit is disrupted and retreats 2 hexes in the direction of Marche. And the Germans will occupy the hex with the active unit. And that unit is now flipped to its used side. The Germans now activate this unit. It moves to this hex, spending 3 movement points for the hex and 1 for leaving an enemy zone of control for 4. And spends 3 more movement points to move to this rough hex, ending its activation there. This armored unit spends 2 movement points to move here, and 6 to make a medium attack on this infantry unit, which is in a woods hex. So the odds here are 14-7 or 2-1. And there's a -1 die roll modifier because the defender is in a wood hex. So we roll 1d10. The roll is a 2 modified to a 1. The attackers retreat. and both attacking units retreat 2 hexes in the direction of the German rear area. And the active unit is flipped to its used side. There's only one unit from the 116th that hasn't been activated. This unit will move here and end its activation. It will not attack, and that's the end of the phase for the 116th Panzer Division. Now we pick a chit for the Allies, and it is a day replacement tactical chit. And this is a day turn, so the Allies will be able to use it. We draw another Allied chit, and this is Allied Air. This is another tactical chit that will be used during this day turn. Pick another chit, and it's another tactical chit, a combat chit. And the Allies have drawn all their tactical chits. The next activation can be really nasty if it is the 2nd Armored Division. So let's see what the draw will be. And it is the British 29th Armored Brigade. And the question is, do the Allies want to activate that British unit, which only has, the British brigade has only 2 units on the map, or do they want to activate 1 unit from another formation? Well, this is what the Allies will do. They will now use, before activating any unit from any formation, the Allied tactical air chit or marker, and this has 2 effects. The first effect is that it reduces the number of actions available for the Germans by 1. So now the Germans only have the 2 actions that they have already used. The other effect of the Allied air tactical chit is that an airstrike can be conducted against any one German unit, and it will be against this Panzer Lehr unit, which is to the south of Dinant. The airstrike is resolved by rolling a die. On a 5 through 9, the unit loses a step. On a 1 through 4, it is disrupted. And on a 0, there is no effect, so we roll 1d10. The roll is a 4, and the defending German unit is disrupted. So we place a disruption marker. And now, before activating the 29th or any other unit, the Allies will play another tactical chit, the extra move tactical chit, for the purpose of activating this reduced unit of the 2nd Armor. And now this unit will execute an attack against this 2nd Panzer unit with the support of the other reduced unit from the 2nd Armor. It is 23-8 or 2-1. The modifiers are -1 because the defenders are in a woods hex, but the active unit spends all of its movement points to execute a heavy attack, so that's a +1, so we're at 0, and this is a day turn, so the Americans have another +1 for a total modifier of +1. But now the Americans also use this tactical combat chit, which gives them an additional +1. So the total modifier is now +2. So we roll 1d10. The result is a 3 modified to a 5. Defender retreats. And the defending unit has to retreat in the direction of the German rear area. 2 hexes. And the active unit occupies a vacated hex, and it's flipped to its used side. And now the Allies play the chit for the 29th Armored Brigade. And it will be placed upside down, meaning that another unit different from the 29th Armored Brigade will be activated, 1 unit from the 2nd Armored Division. And the Allies activate this unit once again. It is flipped to its front side and moved 3 movement points here. With its remaining 6 movement points, it executes a medium attack against the disrupted unit from the Panzer Lehr together with this other unit from the 2nd Armor, 23 between 8, and that is a 2-to-1 attack. And the modifiers here are -1 because the Germans are in woods, but +2 because they are disrupted. And so far we're at +1, plus another +1 because it is a day turn. So it is a total of +2. So we roll 1d10, 5 modified to a 7, and the result is 1 step loss for the defenders. So the defenders, which have currently a 2-step unit, are now reduced to a 1-step unit, and the active American unit is flipped to its used side, and that is the end of this activation. The Americans have 2 actions left and 2 activation markers, one for the 2nd Armor and one for the 84th Infantry. So let's see which one they draw now, and it is the 2nd marker for the 2nd Armor. This is the 4th action for the Allies in this turn. The 2nd Armored has 5 units on the map, and they are all now flipped to their unused sides. And this is not going to be pretty for the Germans. The first unit to be activated will be this unit here from the 2nd Armor, and it will launch a heavy attack using all of its movement points against this reduced and disrupted German unit from the Panzer layer with the support of this other American unit. It is 30-4, and we use the rightmost column 7-1. Total modifiers are +3, so we roll 1d10. A 6 modified to a 9, and it is 2 step losses and a retreat on the defending unit. It only has 1 step loss, so it is eliminated. And now the non-active unit will occupy the vacated hex. And we flip the active unit to its used side. Next, this recon unit from the 2nd Armored moves to this space here, spending 3 movement points. And with its 6 remaining movement point, it executes a medium attack against this unit with the support of the unsupplied reduced 2nd Armored unit. Total of 14 against 3. Normally that's a 4-to-1 attack, but there's no 4-to-1 column in this game, so we use the 3-to-1 column. The modifiers are -2 because there is 1 unsupplied unit attacking, but a +1 because it is a day turn, so we're down to -1. So we roll 1d10. The result is a 0 modified to a -1, and the attackers lose 1 step. And the step loss has to come from the active unit, so this recon unit is eliminated. So that attack backfired against the Americans. There is 1 unit left, actually 2 units left from the 2nd Armored that haven't been activated. Next unit to be activated is this unit. It will move into cell and further down south to this hex here. It has used 3 of its 9 movement factors, still has 6 left. It could launch a medium attack, but it would be a 1-to-1, and the Germans are in the woods, so it will end its activation right there. Now 1 unit left to be activated from the 2nd Armored. It will move into this hex, spending 3 movement points and 3 more to reach Huzon-Ho, ending there its activation. And that's the end of the activation of the 2nd Armor. The unsupplied unit here will not move. 1 more action for the Allies, and the last remaining chit in the cup is drawn, and this is the activation chit for the 84th Infantry. Now, before activating any unit from the 84th, the Allies will use their last tactical chit. This is a day replacement chit. So the Allies can bring one step of any unit that has been eliminated. So they will bring this one-step second armored recon unit back into the game. Now there's several towns that where the unit can start. One is Marche here. The other one is in Houghton here. There is also Hamois and Ciney. So the unit will start here at Marche. So this is the last unit to be activated this turn. The 84th Division receives one reinforcement. The reinforcement can enter in any of three hexes, Boerang, but this one is occupied by the Germans, so it's not available. This eastern hex of Givet, which is also German occupied, is not available. And the western hex of Givet is available, so it starts in that hex. So we have the reinforcement from the 84th, which is in the same hex as one unit of the 29th British Armored Brigade. No attacks can be made across the Meuse River, which would be an attack, for example, as to this unit. So the American unit practically can do nothing there. Now we'll pan to the east, where the bulk of the units of the 84th Infantry are located. And now the Allies can activate 3 units of the 84th Infantry Division. The first unit to be activated is this unit to the south of Verdun, and it will move here, spending 2 of its 3 movement points, and it will conduct a light attack against this unit of the 116th Panzer Division. This unit will be in support, so it is 10-5 or 2-1. Because it is a light attack, there's a -1 die roll modifier, but because it is a day turn, there's a +1. So there is a total of 0 modification. So we roll 1d10, and the roll is a 7, an asterisk for the defender. The defending unit suffers a step loss, and we replace the counter with a reduced counter, and we place it on the same side shown, which is the used side. And that is the end of that activation for that first 84th Infantry unit. Now, this unit is activated, and it will use all of its 3 movement factors to conduct a heavy attack on the recently reduced 116th Panzer unit with the support of the unit that just initiated the attack. So it is 7-2. A 3-1 attack. The modifiers are for the heavy attack +1 and +1 because this is a day turn. So it is +2. So we roll 1d10. And this time the Allies luck out. It is a 0 modified to a 2, no effect. And that's the end of the unit that initiated the attack. That's its activation. And it is flipped to its used side. We can activate 1 more unit from the 84th. And the Allies will activate the motorized unit. That is the unit with the truck counter here. Let's take a closer look. This unit is treated as a motorized unit. It has combat strength of 5, but it has a movement allowance of 9. So it will spend 2 movement points to move to this hex here, adjacent to the 2nd Panzer unit, and it will attack. This will be a medium attack. It has 5 combat factors together with 2 from the 4th Cavalry. So that is 7, and the Germans have 3. So this is a 2-1 attack, and the modifiers are +1 because this is a daylight turn. There are no more applicable modifiers. So it's a 2 to 1 +1. We roll 1d10. The roll is a 1 modified to a 2. And the result is no effect. And that's the end of that activation and the activation of the 84th Infantry. And that's the last unit to be activated in this turn. That's the end of the actions phase. Now we proceed to the recovery phase, and we remove all disruption markers. There's only one, the American unit that is southeast of Marche. Now we flip all inverted units to their unused sides. And that's the end of the recovery phase. And now we move on to the victory point phase. The Germans still have 2 units adjacent to the mouse. And that earns them 2 more victory points for a total of 5. We have reached the halfway point of this game, the end of turn 4 of 8. And this is a situation here. The Germans have reached the Meuse. 2 of their units still remain adjacent to that river, but the Americans have brought in full force the 2nd Armored Division, and these are very powerful units. On the German side here, around Montgolfier, we see a situation that will develop into 2 units being unsupplied during the next turn. So it's going to be interesting how those units can extricate themselves from that situation. And in the vicinity here around Marche, the 84th Infantry has held its ground against the 116th Panzer. Now the Germans most probably will not be able to win the game on scoring points, by scoring points with units adjacent to the Meuse. To do that, they would need 20 points. And that is a very difficult proposition. So the other way the Germans win is by having more victory points than the Allies. And victory points are scored by adjacency to the Meuse, but also by occupying certain towns which are important, such as Boiraing, which the Germans occupy for now. And also there is Ciney, which is up here. There's also Rochefort, which the Germans practically control. We have also Marche and Houghton, which currently the Americans control. So there's going to come a point in time where the Germans realize they cannot win by pushing to the Meuse, and they will have to go for these towns. In terms of reinforcements, this turn has ended, and the German 9th Panzer Division was not able to enter the game because its chit was still in the draw cup. So this is a somewhat powerful unit that the Germans obviously can find a use for, but it has to enter play. The Germans have another unit here, the Führer Belgate Brigade, but this unit withdraws. There's a big possibility that it will withdraw on the December 26th night turn. So we see that the Germans are expecting more reinforcement, but in this game, due to the unique nature of this chit pull mechanic, the entry of units is something that is not certain. But of course, that enhances the replayability of the game. As to destroyed units, the Germans have lost a complete Panzer layered 2-step unit and 1 step of the 116th Panzer Division. The Allies have lost 1 step of the 84th Infantry and 2 steps of the 2nd Armored. This unit, and we have the reduced unit on the board and the recon unit that was destroyed and brought back as a replacement. The next turn will be the December 25th night turn, where the Germans have 4 activations, the Allies 3, followed by the December 26th day turn, where the Allies again have 5 activations and the Germans 3. After that, the next 2 turns have a reduced number of activations. So these 2 turns that are coming up are decisive in this game. So will the Germans push through to the Meuse, or will the Allies stop them in their tracks? Stay tuned for the conclusion of this playthrough. This is Stuka Joe signing off for now. Thanks for watching.